Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah.
Here we go.
Please
Here we
tell me
are
I'm a
at
dad
that
with a good
EFIN
for my
Sports
head,
Show. It's
but
draft season. We are in full swing. We just had the biggest fantasy draft weekend of the year. You guys got teams now. You've got players and real ones, not just mock ones. And so we're going to do a real show about your real teams, who you have, who you missed out on, guys that should be on your roster and aren't, and of course, the ones that you happen to nab. And in order to make all this like entertaining and accurate and actually knowledgeable for your fantasy season, we bring in NFL writer Adam Hulse from Sportskeeda. 5.5 million downloads, over 2,000 articles. You just get after it in football season, and so we have to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us every week. Did you get some drafting done this weekend?
Absolutely. A couple regular drafts done this weekend, multiple slow drafts either completed or in the process right now. This is arguably like the best time of the year, right? Because all the theories and all the, practicing we've done all off season with both fantasy football, theorizing about how this season's all going to play out. It's here now. There's been so much anticipation for the 7 months that the off season goes on. It's here. It's football season. Let's go.
Let's get after it. We talked last week about draft strategies and different techniques and stuff. One of the questions I asked you was if previous drafts were influencing the next draft as far as like players you were looking for, players you were kind of land, or if you were a guy that diversified your stocks across different drafts. Now that you've drafted a few more teams a week later, how do you feel about one way or the other? What did you see?
I like to kind of spread out, I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. And particularly for me, that's in those first few rounds of the draft, right? The guys that like you're building blocks of your entire team. Because if you're taking the same guy in the first, second rounds, like in all of your drafts, and God forbid he goes down for the season with a major injury, now all of your teams are screwed. You kind of got to spread it out a little bit. There's a lot of good players in those first couple rounds. Of course, we're going to have ones that we like better than others, a handful that I like to target, a handful that I kind of like to try to stay away from, but spreading that around. For me, it's those mid to especially late round picks that I see more repetition with. Those are kind of where like those labels of our guys are at, right? Those guys that are your wide receiver 3 or 4s, your bench pieces, stuff like that we believe personally can have a ton of upside and breakout. And if they work out, it's great to have those guys on a lot of rosters. And where you're minimizing risk is if they don't work out, it's not that big of a deal because they're more of a depth piece and they're easier to replace on the waiver wire. Let's say you take Saquon Barkley in the first round and he goes out for the season with an ankle injury. There's nothing on the waiver wire that's going to replace Saquon Barkley, right? Yeah, so that's why you kind of got to diversify early.
We talked about the different strategies like zero RB and stuff like that. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, go check out last week's show. I don't want to spend too much time going over what we already talked about, but please go back and check that out. The early rounds, I think it depends on your format. If you're playing super flex, obviously more quarterbacks are going to go. If there's specialty scoring at certain positions, you're going to see those go first. But typical PPR regular drafts, it's the usual suspects at the top. Don't have to go through them all. The Jeffersons, McCaffrey, Ecklers, Kelsey, see Mahomes going in the first 2 round, Diggs, Robinson, Henry Chubb, guys like that. Who are some guys that you have kind of been targeting, some of the must-haves?
Like the top 3 to me are very obvious. And like the 3 that I think you really can't go wrong with is Jefferson, McCaffrey, Kelsey, right? We don't have to spend a lot of time talking about those 3 guys. Obviously, they're going to be towards the top. They don't necessarily have to be the first 3 picks, but I have them at the top of those 3 positions.
They're going first round, regardless of your setup.
No doubt. If you have a mid to late first round pick and one of those 3 guys are there, if it's me, I pull the trigger right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
I got a number 1 that I used on Jefferson. I could have gone McCaffrey, I could have gone Eckler, but I got the number 1 pick. I want the guy that I know is going to pay off, and that's Jefferson. We've talked about consensus number 1s and the lack of of supporting history for top 10 finishes, etc. Jefferson is a number one receiver, but I don't think he's the consensus number one pick. So I feel safe going there. And again, I know I'm going to get production out of that. McCaffrey gets hurt, which is very possible. Eckler could get hurt. His numbers could go down with that offense. Possibilities there. There's no possibility with Jefferson not showing up for this season. So the drafts I had that number one pick, I definitely took Jefferson.
This year specifically is very strange because of everything that was happening with the running backs and their contracts, right? Yeah. There was a lot of disgruntled superstar running backs this offseason, and that worries me just a little bit for fantasy. Guys like Saquon, Eckler, and Jacobs, who are seeking those big contracts this offseason and didn't get them. Now, what I worry about a little bit with those guys is if they have a minor injury, why would they have motivation necessarily to play through that injury and risk injuring themselves more when you know next offseason they're going right back to these contract discussions again, whether it be with their team or in free agency. So I slightly worry a little bit if their eyes are not so much on producing this year, but getting paid next year and how that's going to affect their fantasy value.
But I think getting paid also has to do with performance. And I don't think you're not saying that. If you want to get paid, you got to perform this year. So I look to guys like Taylor, Eckler, especially in the running back room. They want to ball out. They want to get big numbers. They want to show, hey, I'm worth the money to get that big contract. And so I agree with you that obviously injury is that much more devastating for guys looking for a contract than the guys already have. Guys already have it. If I get hurt, it's okay. I said I get paid. The other guys are looking for that money. They can't afford to get injured. No pun intended.
Right. But they also have proven production to kind of lean back on. And look, I know it's a completely different position, so the discussion is a little bit different, but a somewhat relative example could be Lamar Jackson this year, right? A lot of rumblings out there that he chose not to play at the end of the year last year because he was still annoyed that he didn't get his big contract, and he was slightly injured, probably could have played through it. Again, these are all just rumors. We don't know if that's what happens. But I would worry just a little bit with one of these running backs almost taking the same approach. Let's say they go nuts in the first half of the season, go crazy, put up huge numbers, and sprain their ankle that they just kind of lingers, and they're not super motivated to get back out there because they've already got the bargaining chips they're looking for.
I was going to start with quarterbacks. We're already on running backs, so we'll stay here in the running back room. Who are your, after the top tier guys? Once those guys are gone, and this is extremely important, obviously, if you're playing zero RB strategy, so you're in third, fourth round before you ever even take an RB. Who are the guys that are sitting there that you actually are trying to target later on?
When it comes to that next level of running back, there's a few that, I find pretty interesting this year. And one of them is a guy that really seems to be very polarizing in the fantasy community this season, and that's Travis Etienne. There's a lot of people who are all completely out on Travis Etienne, and they have their reasons for being so, and that's fine, but he was a huge piece of their offense last year. In that first year coming off of an injury, he looked explosive. He should be explosive again this year, and because there's so many people out on Travis Etienne, there's a lot of drafts where I'm seeing him slip very far down, and you can get him for a very reasonable price right now, and I think he has top 5 upside. Sure, he has some bust potential with him as well, but playing in that offense with Trevor Lawrence, with all of those weapons, you know how I feel about the Jaguars and how I expect them to take that next step forward. There's going to be a lot of scoring opportunities there for Etienne.
Etienne's ADP is about 11.8 right now, according to fantasypros.com. Love fantasypros.com. Go check them out. Lots of great free tools there. You can see ADP across multiple leagues at the same time. You get multiple league information, multiple site information, Yahoo, Sleeper, ESPN. They're all there. Anyway, he's sitting at about 11.8 right now. I think I'm just kind of looking at a couple of the drafts that I did, and for the most part, he's going later than that.
Yeah.
So people...
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's strange because when you get a draft where there's someone who believes in Etienne, he can be, like I said, third, fourth, fifth round pick, but there's a lot of people in the fantasy world right now who are super out, super against, all out on Etienne. Basically, he's a straight up bust potential this year, which looks like he could be. I'm not saying their reasons aren't valid, but the upside to me is definitely there.
Yeah, 11th running back. I don't know. I guess it depends on the league. If I see him as the 11th running back off the board, I mean, you clearly have no problem with it. I'll tell you another guy that for some reason is not slipping, but he's sneakily getting through because I think people are watching the draft boards, and so they're not picking up on him. It's not always, but it's Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson, I expect to have a big year. He really looks to be the cornerstone of the offense right now. Don't get me wrong. I see him in leagues going in the second round, but I've seen him slipped as far as the 5th round. So I don't know if that's a polarizing thing. I don't know if it's just a New England thing. Maybe it's just a strategy thing.
Yeah, for sure. And, maybe like some people are spooked, by the Zeke signing. Zeke can definitely be a touchdown vulture, short yardage, goal line, red zone type of back. His skill set, especially when it comes to how good of a blocker he is, that to me just seems like something Belichick is going to love. The toughness of Zeke, the pass blocking skills of Zeke, stuff like that. Belichick loves that intangible type stuff.
He always bounces around with his running backs. It's always plug and play. It depends on the play. Right. There's different running back in every play. Like he does that all year long. Who else do I see here at running back? Mixon. I think a lot of people are really high on Mixon. That's another polarizing player. People are all in or all out. Deep sleeper. You'll hear associated with his name a lot. I'm middle late rounder. He's a good RB3 for my team. If it's a big league, I guess I'll stick him in at RB2 if I had to. But I'm probably maybe a little more down than as of late. His ADP has definitely been rising.
Some of the similar reasons, like I even just said with ETN, and it's that he plays in that monster offense, right? And that the scoring opportunity should be there, with Burrow, with Chase, insane touchdown upside that comes along with Mixon.
Don't you feel there's a lot of mouths to feed, though, in an offense
there
like
is
that?
a lot of mouths to feed,
right?
but there's a lot of mouths to feed, but not really in the rushing game. That backfield is kind of all Mixon at this point. They got rid of P. Ryan. There's no one really challenging Mixon's job security. And as we kind of saw last year, it was like a tale of two halves with Mixon, right? He was a major bust the first part of last season, and then he was a monster in another part of the season. So, maybe we'll see some of that.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the year, he's finishing in the high 20s all the way up into the high 40s for running backs of the week. And, I mean, it's just back and forth. I mean, he did that throughout the whole season. Maybe that's why I'm a little more out on him, because I like consistency. So when we talk sleeper running backs and consistency, one of the guys I was high on, able to pick up late, was Alexander Mattison. And a lot of people kind of shake their head at Mattison, and I understand why, but he's stepping in for Cook. Cook, of course, going over 1,000 yards season after season after season. Now Madison's got to step in and fill that role. And when you talk about the offense, they added a receiver, tried to plus things up a little bit, but the game plan really shouldn't change that much. And so I really don't understand why people are more down. He's the number one guy in Minnesota. And if Cook could do it, Madison's always filled in nicely. I don't really see why people are so down on him.
Yeah, I mean, Madison, I love Madison at his current ADP. He can be had for pretty cheap, and he also carries a lot of that upside. And I agree with you that it's strange because when Cook was still there, he was a first or a second round pick with the Vikings. And now Madison's basically going to fill the exact same role that Cook was. And you can get him in the mid rounds, which is obviously way cheaper than the price that Cook was going for in that same role. So like you said, too, with Madison, he filled in very nicely. Yes, he does catch the ball. And he filled in nicely in times that Cook was out. I forget the exact stat, but I saw it recently. It was he's had 5 games in his career where he had at least 20 carries, and 3 of them he went over 100 yards. So with more carries and more touches, ton of upside for Madison.
Madison's ADP right now, RB23 on average, pick 62 on average. So yeah, you can grab him late. I was able to get Madison in the 6th round. That was that 72 pick. So I was really happy with that. One of the stacks, or people I've been targeting as we kind of transition across, is Lawrence at quarterback and Ridley, because I wasn't taking a first round quarterback. I pretty consistently have been able to grab Lawrence. I'm a guy that likes to have kind of the same stuff across the board, so it's easier to manage. I've got too many leagues. Like you said, if someone gets hurt, I know he's probably hurt in most of my leagues, so I got to go back and replace him everywhere rather than trying to figure out which leagues I have him in, which one I don't. But I digress. Lawrence, a big guy at quarterback that I'm kind of targeting after that top tier. And I feel like he's probably still in the top tier, but quarterbacks, because of strategy, etc., able to grab him 2nd, 3rd round if you want to grab a quarterback that early. And a lot of people don't, but I've been able to get him, so I have.
I can't have enough nice things to say about Trevor Lawrence. Like grab all the Trevor Lawrence that you can. I mean, in Superflex leagues, he does go as high as the first rounds. But like you said, in one QB, that is kind of where you can take him. It seems like to me in fantasy this year, there's that stack of 8 quarterbacks at the top that like everybody's kind of counting on. Sure, there's your top 3, of course, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts. And then there's that group of 5 right after that seem to be the preferred choices. Those 8 go relatively early. Jackson, Herbert, Burrow, Lawrence, Field. Those are that next group of 5, like the 3 to 5. If you don't get one of those 8, you can wait a long time if you don't get one of those 8 before you have to go quarterback until you get to your next level of guys like Tua and Danny Jones and Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, guys like that. You like, especially in one QB leagues, you can wait a long time before you have to get any of those guys.
Who's your mid-round kind of guys that you're targeting? Well, you said Jones. Let's bring up Jones because I know you're not a big Giants fan, but we have both kind of mentioned that Giants fan or not, fantasy-wise, he's kind of a nice guy to have.
I'm all out on the Giants. If you guys listen to our preview shows for this season and you want to hear my opinion on the Giants, go back and listen to that episode and find out just how low I am on the Giants. I do not like Daniel Jones as a franchise quarterback in the NFL, but in fantasy football, I actually love Daniel Jones. He was a top 10 quarterback last year in fantasy football. This year, he's got that second year in this new system under Brian Daboll. They brought in Darren Waller, who if Waller can stay healthy, that's going to be a lot of easy completions for Danny Jones. And he ran over 700 yards last year. I think that maybe he won't get 700 again, but he's going to run a lot again this year because he's very good at it. And that's what Daboll loves to do with his quarterback. So I do love Daniel Jones as a mid-round quarterback.
I'm not calling him necessarily a league winner or anything, but I mean, he had 8 top 15 weekly finishes. And, that's where you want your quarterback. You want him to finish at least in the top half. If you don't have one of those top tier guys and you're grabbing those middle tier guys, top half is all you can expect. Like Daniel Jones, I saw that you wrote an article on Jordan Love. How are we feeling on Jordan Love from a fantasy perspective?
You don't want Jordan Love to be your QB1 by any means in fantasy football. If he's your QB1, that's going to be a major problem for you. It means that, you waited too long for quarterback and other guys were taking their QB2s before you got your QB1. Yeah, like a QB2 in Superflex is fine. In one QB, you would do that with
Love? You would have Love as your QB2 in a Superflex? I'm just asking.
Not ideally.
Okay.
Not ideally, but there's worse options for your QB2 than Jordan Love, considering some of the weapons he has around him. Aaron Jones is a great receiver. Christian Watson has a ton of upside. Packers obviously have a good proven track record with quarterbacks. Jordan Love, I see him like his best situation, of course, is as a QB2 in a one quarterback league. I think he's an excellent bench stash for your one quarterback leagues, especially for a team that if you didn't get one of those top 8 quarterbacks and your starting quarterback is a guy like Daniel Jones, who we just talked about, or something like that, who does have a pretty low floor. That's where I think Jordan Love is good. Guys like Jordan Love, guys like Kenny Pickett, I love in that similar kind of situation. Why we do this
show, because this is why I have Adam Hulse here, because he goes straight into it. Kenny Pickett, I wonder, are you in or out? Best preseason quarterback of the preseason, hands down.
Yeah.
Highest rating, perfect quarterback rating coming out of the preseason. He showed up and showed out. If you listen to the Pittsburgh show, I'm very high because of the schedule. I gave them quite a few more wins than they might have gotten with a different schedule. But with their schedule and with what Pickett showed, I'm feeling really good. Go check out that Pittsburgh episode and see where I got them finishing. All 32 teams are out there. Pickett, are you in or out right now?
I'm in on Pickett. And, he's showing all the signs that he should take a big step forward this year. When it comes to a fantasy perspective with Pickett, he's okay for a QB2. He's my favorite QB3. In a Superflex league, if I can get Pickett as my third quarterback, he's my absolute favorite third quarterback to have with that potential upside to take over the QB2 spot. That's how I kind of feel about Pickett in fantasy.
Love is before or after Pickett? They're both on the board. You're looking at your QB2,
Pickett.
QB3.
Pickett.
You're going to take Pickett over Love.
Easy. To me, by a lot. You know, to me, that wouldn't even be like a debate. Like, if it's Pickett or Love on the board, quick click Pickett, done. For your mid to late round guys, I always tell people with fantasy, like, don't fall in love with the guys everybody else is telling you to fall in love with. You know what I mean? Have your guys in those rounds. And if you're a believer that, you know, Jordan Love's going to be that third in succession to Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, then yeah, like, you know, use that pick. Like I said, like, he's perfectly fine, and he's a great QB3 type of pick. If he's your QB2, there's risk there for sure. If it's me, I'm going Pickett, but if Love's your third quarterback, that's fine.
I believe you quoted Stephen A. Stephen A. loves some Jordan Love himself. He thinks he's going to do very well this year. You can find that over at Sportskeeda. Just go over to Sportskeeda. It's with a K, Sports Keeda, and just put in Adam's name. You'll find all these great articles we're talking about all season long, honestly, but a lot of good draft analysis in there. One more quarterback. Well, I'm going to say a name at the quarterback position, and you can basically tell me in or out. Goff, in or out?
I'm in on Goff. He was hot and cold last year for sure when it comes to a fantasy perspective, but as a QB2 in a super flex league, yeah, I mean, why not Goff?
Geno.
Geno Smith. I'm okay with Geno as a QB2 as well. I actually see people taking Geno as a QB1. I'm not in on Geno as a QB1. I'm not really in on Geno in general from a Geno perspective, but the offense around him, I think, makes him a fine QB2. I just don't want him as a QB1. I'm
QB2 on Geno all day, but I grabbed as much Geno at QB2 as I could. I love that offense. So many mouths to feed. That's why I don't like grabbing Seahawk players, because there's so many mouths to feed unless it's a best ball. Yeah. If it's best ball, grab every Seahawk player you can. Everybody in that offense catches the ball. It's Pete Carroll. Look what he did with Russell Wilson. I don't think Geno is a fluke because he's playing with Pete Carroll. It's kind of like Brock Purdy down in San Francisco. He's got the right coach for his situation. Brock Purdy, I think, is a fantastic QB3. I think he's a late find when you're grabbing those late guys. If it's a super flex and you need a QB3, I'm really liking Brock Purdy. And I was kind of down on him in the season, but now that he's healthy, now that he's throwing, it's the offense around him. I think Purdy's numbers are going to be okay.
I like Purdy too a lot as a QB3 as well. And similar to what I said about Pickett, he's that QB3 that as the year goes on may become your QB2 in a superflex.
It's that risk that's worth taking with Jordan Love, with Kenny Pickett, with Brock Purdy. Those guys all fit in the same category because you got to risk it for the biscuit. And when you're looking to risk it, these are three guys that are worth risking it on. They're in offenses that 100% could take off big time this year. Last one, Daniel Ritter. He seems to be a little polarizing as well. They've got Bijan, but they like to run first. They play in a crappy division. I can go back and forth all day. Where are you at on Daniel Ritter?
I'm fine with Ritter as a QB3 as well. I mean, he's pretty far down the list, Ritter. But he's not the worst option for QB3, but you better not have him any higher than QB3, in my opinion, because there's just too much risk there to have him any higher than that.
Other than a super flex league, I think he can stay on the board. I think you can leave him out there and you can try and be the first one to grab him if he shows up. Same with someone like a Howell. I don't think you have to have Howell on your team, but he's someone to watch. So now we get in the wide receivers. Wide receivers are interesting because wide receivers fly off the board because you got your top tier, middle tier, and all that, but there's a lot more of them. There's a lot more top tier wide receivers. What perplexes me is that we've come into this era of going zero RB, yet I feel like at the same time that you could go zero wide receiver for the first few rounds. There's still going to be plenty of quality receivers later on because the pool is so big.
Yeah, and that ties right into what I said earlier in the episode. We don't get so locked into one strategy. Don't go into a draft saying, I'm going zero RB no matter what. Let's say you have pick 7 or 8 and the first 6 teams before you all avoided running backs also. There might be a great opportunity to go McCaffrey, and then on the way back, you may even still get someone like an Eckler or a Saquon if everybody else is targeting receivers, Kelsey, quarterbacks in the super flex. So, don't get locked into that zero RB just because you want to.
I'm looking at guys that kind of went heavy RB, if you will. And this guy's got Eckler, Chubb, and then St. Brown. This guy's got Kupp, Henry, Pollard. You're not going to be mad at that. I got a Chubb, Stevenson, Sanders. I got a McCaffrey, Robinson, and then they went with Andrew, still ended up with Metcalf and Deebo Samuel. Again, a little risk there, but they got McCaffrey, Robinson in the number 2 arguably number 2 tight end. So, they're happy with their strategy and they've got quality players. I think it's possible to go either way. I don't think you have to get locked in, like you're saying, to a 0 RB or 0 wide receiver or however you want to do it. Even in super
I have
flex.
another example, and it's, something that I think we talked about off air, and I did a super flex draft recently, and, I was pretty sold on the idea that, I'm going to take quarterback in the first round and kind of see where it goes from there. But I had that 7th pick, and at pick 7, Christian McCaffrey was still sitting there. And I was like, let me pivot and let me go McCaffrey. Also from my own perspective, because I didn't have him in any other leagues yet. So I said, okay, here's where I can get my share of McCaffrey. And then I still ended up later with my 2 quarterbacks as Danny Jones and Deshaun Watson. My second running back ended up being Tony Pollard. So, I'll take that in a super flex. Watson, Danny Jones, Pollard, and CMC. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I got Eckler at 11. It was a super flex league, and I ended up with Eckler. I got the Lawrence Ridley stack. I got Geno as my QB2. I got Madison pair up with Eckler, so I got number 1s across the board there.
Yeah, well, that's that same thing with being flexible with strategy. A lot of us go into a super flex planning on taking that quarterback in the first round, and if you have one of the top few picks and you can get your Mahomes, Hurts, Josh Allen, those top 3, if I can get one of those top 3 in a super flex, I'm doing it every time. Even if Jefferson or McCaffrey is available. If they're not there, you have to, in my opinion, see who else is and pivot and not get overly worried that you're not going to get any quarterbacks, because there are some decent ones after the top few. And if you're loaded at other spots, it's okay to have not one of the top quarterbacks, because now you've got dominant running backs or dominant receivers or whatever it is that you took instead of the quarterback.
And you've got some trade value.
Oh, yeah.
Wide receivers, we know the top tier, the Jefferson, Chase, Lamb. We'll throw Kelsey in there too, because he really is a wide receiver. St. Brown, Cup, Hill, Diggs, AJ. We know those are the guys going first. Who's going mid-round, or who are you kind of looking at mid-round, hoping would slip and looking for later on?
This guy kind of seems to get overlooked most years. This year, that's happening again, and he can be had for pretty cheap to what his upside is. I know he's gotten just a little bit older now, and there's this competition for targets because of who they drafted, but I'm still in on Keenan Allen. He can be a target machine when he's healthy. He's also in one of those high-powered offenses. He's already shown that him and Justin Herbert have elite chemistry together. I know they drafted Quentin Johnston, and I know that there's risk involved with Keenan Allen, but where he's currently going right now, I think there's some really good value on Keenan Allen, because you can take him pretty easily as a wide receiver 2, even a wide receiver 3, depending the way you're drafting. If you are doing that 0 RB, you have opportunities for guys like Keenan as your 3rd receiver. There aren't a ton of wide receiver 2-3s that have legitimate wide receiver 1 potential on a weekly basis.
Yeah, regardless of format, I'm seeing him going between 3 and 6 ADP on him right now. And it's interesting to see who's even Devonta's going high. Higgins is going high. DK is going high. All these guys going, even DJ Moore is ahead of Keenan Allen on the average ADP. DJ Moore at 29, Keenan Allen at 30. DJ Moore's overall is 51 and Keenan Allen's is 43, going around each other. But again, between 3 and 6, depending on, I think if you're in a 10-12 team single quarterback league, I think you can look around 5th round plus or minus for someone like a Keenan Allen. What I do see though is when Keenan goes, you also see Williams go. I don't want to miss out on a piece of that offense.
Yeah, to me, I'm trusting Keenan Allen more so than Mike Williams. I'm a little bit out on Mike Williams this year because you can get them for kind of similar prices, Keenan or Williams, and I'm definitely more Keenan than I am Williams. 100%. And if I don't get either of them, I'm in on taking Quentin Johnston later on.
I was going to bring it up. So that's why Adam Hulse is here.
Well, this offense already passes the ball a ton. And remember, they just brought in Kellen Moore also to be their offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore likes to pass the ball a lot also, so there are enough mouths that can be fed there. We even saw a guy like Josh Palmer last year really step up and make an impact fantasy-wise in a lot of games. Quentin Johnston, they drafted him to be a part of the offense. They wouldn't have used such a high draft pick on a guy if he was just going to be a guy that gets buried on the depth chart. When you use that high of a pick, it indicates you are planning to use this person.
Get in a conversation with Chuck Bass, the Bass Hole, at Chuck Bass FF on Twitter about the Charger receiving core, and he makes a fantastic point. if you start talking about this with him. Everybody's worried about injuries with Allen and Williams. Will they make it the whole season? How long will they be? How many games are they going to miss? I don't want any part of the Chargers offense. Look, if you're worried about injuries, then obviously Quentin should be on your roster, because either one of those guys goes down, he automatically moves into that number 2 spot. So I'm definitely up on Quentin big time for sure.
Oh yeah, and he can be had pretty cheap too.
He's definitely a late round guy. He's definitely someone, once you filled out your starters, that you can start looking for, and he definitely might earn a starting role on your roster depending on the setup. Let's talk about some sleepers. Who are some guys that are sliding and should be sliding, could definitely pay off as the season goes on?
I mean, right now I have 2 late round guys, 1 wide receiver and 1 running back, that I find myself drafting everywhere that I can in my drafts. For a running back, it's Kenneth Gainwell for me. You can get him very late in drafts, and there's a lot of buzz out there that Kenneth Gainwell might end up being the RB1 in the Eagles offense. It looks like they are going to take a committee approach. Swift is definitely going to get his touches. But just because Swift is going to get his touches doesn't mean that Gainwell can't eat also. If Gainwell is going to get a lot of the early down work and he's going to get a lot of usage for the Eagles, they already showed last year that, they can have that dominant ground attack. And Gainwell right now in fantasy drafts, I'm taking him in late rounds because he has more upside than almost anybody at his current ADP. So I like Gainwell. And for wide receivers, I think this is a guy that...
We're not telling you to grab him early. We're talking these, sleepers.
Sleepers, late round guys that I'm taking my shot on. For receivers, it's a guy that I think we talked about off air as well, because someone else we know is super high on this person. And that's Marvin Mims.
Yep, I knew you were going to bring him up.
Especially with the Jerry Jeudy injury now, I love Marvin Mims even more. He already looked like he was climbing up that pecking order and really earning himself a bigger role in this offense prior to the Jeudy injury. Now that there's the Jeudy injury as well, Cortland Sutton's been a bit of a disappointment lately. Marvin Mims has a real chance to get a big role in this new Sean Payton offense with Russell Wilson. He's another guy. You can get him very late in drafts. A lot of upside for where he can be taken. And for guys like Gainwell and Mims, as I kind of mentioned before, because of where you're taking them so late, if they don't work out, you just drop them, and it's not a huge loss to your roster. It was a guy that you were doing kind of a dart throw with, and if they work out, there's huge upside. If not, just replace them with someone else on the waiver wire.
Absolutely. That's why they're called sleepers. Eric Laneker over at Patriot Sports Radio is when you turn me on to Marvin Mims. Go check out Patriot Sports Radio. A lot of good stuff over there. Mims is definitely a guy on my list for sure. Brought up Jordan Love. I like Green Bay receivers. Dobbs has still been there. I think those are guys that you can grab late. I like Hyatt in New York. Again, these are sleepers. These are not season winners. These are guys that you can throw in and expect some quality value, guys that you're going to put on your roster and watch to see what they do.
Circling back to a strategy talk as well, like you're saying with sleepers, I'm a guy that late in my drafts, I'm 100% looking for upside guys.
Yes.
I don't care how low their floor is late in the draft. I'm not worried about that, because to me, a late round pick can't be a bust. There's no such thing as a bust in the late rounds. I don't need safe picks late in my drafts. I want high upside guys that can they have that upside potential to possibly break into my starting lineup eventually, or they have upside potential that they could be trade bait later on. I don't care about the floor. Give me the ceiling late in drafts, 100% in on upside.
Yeah, you'll see on my rosters, I've bought a lot of shares of Kareem Hunt as one of my last picks. If he lands somewhere, he's going to play. He's going to land somewhere.
On that same Kareem Hunt token, I have a lot of shares of Evan Hull, because right now he is the number 1 running back for the Colts. You can take him with your last pick in some drafts. And, the general thought out there is that the Colts are going to sign another running back like a Kareem Hunt or a Leonard Fournette. But if they don't, right now it looks like Hull's going to be their starting running back.
It definitely could be. And you grab yourself your last pick or one of your last picks, you grab yourself an RB1.
He was such a late pick, just drop him. It's not a big deal. You don't have to hit, You
see Zay Jones going down in this area. You see Pierce going. You see Campbell, Hyatt, Boyd, Gallup, Mitchie, and Mingo taking some chances on rookies. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff happened in the late round. Like you said, I'm not mad at any of it because You just don't know where injuries are going to go. You know where team mentalities are going to go. In the end, you didn't really waste a pick, took a chance, and you got to risk it for the biscuit, baby. So grab somebody. They're out there. If you guys got questions, shoot them to us on the Twitter. We'll be more than happy to answer them. You can send them to @Adam Hulse Sports on Twitter or find his link tree there, that EFIN Sports Show. You can get us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you listen to podcasts, and we love to answer those questions. So if you are listening, you got questions, let us know what you got. We'll definitely get in there. Next week, when we come on, we're going to talk about start sits for week 1. A lot of people will be doing it. Ours will be most accurate because we have Adam Hulse here. Draft-wise, over this last week, people are still going to draft. I've definitely got a couple set up. I'm sure you do as well. Any draft wrap-up thoughts as we head out of this one?
Handcuff running backs are always a strategy when it comes to draft, right?
This is true. I've gotten off it a little bit, but probably to my own detriment.
Yeah, but for me, I'm back on it on like the new thought of handcuff running backs of not drafting my own handcuffs, drafting other handcuffs.
Yes.
That's the way, in my opinion, to do it. Like, for example, if Christian McCaffrey is not on my team, I'm perfectly fine with drafting Eli Mitchell because if for whatever reason McCaffrey goes down, now I have the 49ers RB1. So you're, instead of handcuffing your own guys in case they get injured, you're trying to double down on it because it's like now I have Eckler and Eli Mitchell as opposed to if I have McCaffrey and taking Mitchell. Mitchell's only going to be relevant if McCaffrey gets hurt.
How to draft a handcuff with Adam Hulse. Do a whole thing on that because that really is a strategy. Why take up a roster spot for a guy that you're not going to play unless your own player gets hurt? Fill that roster spot. When you're talking about a handcuff, don't grab your handcuff. Grab someone else's handcuff. You can protect yourself if you have a Christian McCaffrey, someone who's likely to go down. Definitely smarter to grab McCaffrey's backup for the same reason. Barkley's backup, I think, is a good one. Who else? Mixon's backup real late. You take him super late. You take last pick. You grab Mixon's backup. Madison's backup.
Zamir White.
There are backups out there to be had. I think where you want to stay from to kind of finish up same line of thought is the committee rooms. And you kind of brought that up. I'm taking like a last pick on a McKinnon, but Kansas City room is committee. And so you kind of guess best ball. That's a best ball. Committees are great for best ball.
All the way.
Best ball. Look at your committee. Look at your Philly. Look at your Kansas City.
McKinnon and best ball all day. Yeah.
Yes. Seattle's a great place to go for best ball. San Francisco's a good spot to go for best ball.
Oh, yeah.
Miami, another one for best ball. But it's hard to grab individuals on those teams because it's going to go around. It's going to get spread around. The game plan's going to respond to the defense on the other side of the field, maximizing weaknesses. Chargers kind of the same way. You're not going to see, whereas in Minnesota, all you got to do is throw it towards Jefferson. That's all you got to do. I mean, you've got other plays to do. You can open Jefferson up with other plays, but other than that, it's the Jefferson show. Just something else to look at on that. Watch out for committees. Even at wide, you can have a wide receiver committee like they do in LA and Seattle. Watch what you're doing there. We know JSN's going to be a fantastic player pro-wise. We don't know what he's going to get you on a week-to-week basis. Best ball, JSN all day. But if you're in a regular league, me personally, I'm a little more cautious. I might steal him if he's still there in a mid to late round, but I'm not going to target him as early as I might a Ridley or something like that.
I love JSN, but like you said, best ball and Dynasty is where I'm looking JSN. In your regular season-long traditional type of formats, I'm fading JSN.
I'm a little surprised that Devonta's going so high in that offense because there's so many weapons, so many ways to go. I like Devonta as a wide receiver too. I don't want to call it wasting. I'm not going to use a second or third, even a third, probably not even a fourth round on Devonta. And of course, he's gone by then, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay missing out on Devonta because that ball's going to go everywhere.
Fading him as well. I agree with you for a lot of the reasons that you said. Personally, I also fade A.J. Brown at ADP. Like, I'm not a big A.J. Brown guy in that offense. I still want to see another year of Jalen Hurts as a passer before I'm going to buy into the fact that he can be an elite passer. He's obviously a fantasy superstar quarterback and a superstar in the NFL with his dual threat ability. At ADP, I mean, AJ Brown goes as high as the second round in some drafts, and
I see him go consistently in the first round. Consistently.
Yeah, for me, at his ADP, there's a lot of other guys I'd rather have.
I agree. Deontay Johnson. A lot of people saying, "Oh, he had so many catches. There's no way he's gonna put in 0 touchdowns." And then I heard a really compelling argument that said it the exact opposite way. If that guy can have that many catches and still not get in the end zone, I want no piece of that guy. Which is kind of eye-opening. Like, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense.
On last week's episode, we referenced a little bit, the advanced metrics and the advanced analytics when it comes down to breaking down fantasy. And those advanced statistics absolutely love Deontay Johnson. They all point to Deontay that his expected value this year is that he should be a star. Now, should is the key word there, and that's the thing with the advanced statistics and analytics. They tell you what, quote-unquote, should happen. That doesn't mean it will happen. So, again, there's a lot of indicators that Deontay Johnson's a great pick, and I think he's, fine for mid-rounds. But, when you kind of watch the Steelers right now and watch what's going on, you would know more than anyone. They're your team. It feels like Pickens is going to be the receiver. There's going to be an increase in Pickens and a decrease in Deontay, despite the advanced stats saying that Deontay's the star.
It's That EFIN Sports Show. It's Adam Hulse. Find Adam Hulse at Adam Hulse Sports. Go over to Sportskeeda, read all his articles. 5.5 million downloads for Adam. 5.5 million. There's a reason that many people are reading what he has to say, because gosh darn it, the guy's pretty good. We hope you enjoyed the show, That EFIN Sports Show. We're here every week. Next week, start sits. Ooh, baby. Can you feel the electricity in the air? It is almost time to put those rosters to work. We're going to talk about how to do that to the best of your ability next week. We will see you then. Until then, you guys be safe out there. Let us know your thoughts, comments, questions. We're here at That EFIN Sports Show, keyword EFIN. We'll see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.